Without further ado, the tradition here for these Graduate Institute talks is for the speaker to introduce, I gave it away, don't look. For the speaker to introduce himself, and I have given a couple of lectures before. In fact, almost exactly 10 years ago to the day, I gave this same lecture, showed the same film, and said completely different stuff that I'm about to say now. If you happen to have been there 10 years ago, I'm basically picking up exactly where I left off there. I'm Michael Ivins. I'm a graduate of college. I graduated the undergraduate in 1997, stuck around to do a master's degree in liberal arts, graduated in 99. I studied philosophy in Pittsburgh after that. For the last 10 years, I've been teaching at a charter school network in Phoenix called Great Hearts Academies, where I teach humane letters to 11th and 12th graders. It's a sort of great books curriculum taught entirely in seminar style, so no textbooks, no lectures, which is great. And I also do faculty development and continuing education, workshops on Socratic pedagogy, and in the summers, faculty development seminars. This year was Xenophon and another one on Goethe. So it's good stuff happening in Phoenix, and it's a good place. So the main thing we're here to do today is just watch a movie, which is nice. You don't have to listen to a lecture. My job is merely to offer an introduction and afterwards some brief commentary, which hopefully gets at something of what this elusive filmmaker is up to. Before we watch Chris Marker's La Jetée, which in English is The Pier, I'm actually not going to talk about the film itself, at least not directly. I just want to get us thinking in the most elementary way about cinema and what happens to us when we watch a film. So I'm going to talk about a philosopher, underappreciated in many circles, who thrived at the turn of the 20th century and who found in the cinematograph, the apparatus invented by the Lumiere brothers at the end of the 19th century, the perfect analogy for faults he found in philosophies, ancient and modern, which have been misguided, according to him, in the pursuit of truth by mistaking the native habits of the intellect for genuine thinking of the real. The philosopher in question is Henri Bergson. From the beginning, a central concern of his was the nature of time and how it had been misunderstood due to the transposing of the pragmatic functions of the mind to a theoretical attitude which might give access to the real. For Bergson, the native function of the intellect is to be a tool for the survival of the organism. From basic perception to the exercise of memory to the higher operations of the intellect, the primary function of thinking is to solidify an unstable world of becoming into something stable enough to be useful for the activity of life. One of the main ways we do this, according to Bergson, is by spatializing time. That is, we consider the future in all its uncertainty in terms of its proximate utility, in the same way that we do space. And we use past experience as a template for predicting the future. In his earliest published work, Time and Free Will, Bergson criticized the conceptualization of time exemplified by the Aristotelian formulation, time is the number of motion with respect to the before and after. For Bergson, the very act of counting implies spatial placement. Even if we eventually learn to abstract numbers from things and perform the operations of arithmetic without reminding ourselves that numbers are accumulations of things, it is nonetheless true that numbers originate and ultimately refer back to beings which exist in space. So, for example, when I count sheep, even if I'm just using my imagination, I line them up side by side in rows and keep track of them spatially as I add them up. Time, when it is conceived as a process of counting, is reduced to that aspect of itself which can be understood on the basis of an analogy with our experience of space. It's not exactly that such a notion of time is false, but it's limited according to Bergson. One aspect that escapes this notion of time is the experience of the flow of time. in which conscious states melt into one another. For counting necessarily divides the continuous into discrete magnitudes, even if they are as small as we like. If in reality conscious states are not discrete, but flow and melt into one another, counting time, which marks the extremities of portions of lived experience, necessarily neglects what is in between the extremities, marked by the mental operation of counting. So Bergson's earliest critique of classical theories of time rests on a claim that arithmetic is essentially geometrical, a claim which many might find dubious. In Matter and Memory, however, he makes an argument we might find more compelling, as it might speak more closely to our personal experience. There he argues that it is a mistake to assume, for example, that the future necessarily resembles the past, and that we do so primarily because of the practicalities of life that require us to spatialize time in order to function in a world with an unstable present and an indeterminate future. In our daily life, our activities, the very motions of our bodies, are largely determined by the immediacy of needs and the proximity of objects susceptible to our action that might meet these needs. For example, if I'm sitting in my living room and I realize that I'm hungry, fulfilling that need prompts me to consider my surroundings in terms of the range of possibilities that might fulfill that need. Thinking strictly spatially, I could reach forward to the bowl of carrot sticks on the coffee table and fulfill my need for food. If I'm hungrier than that, I could imagine going into the kitchen and checking the second shelf of the cupboard for some cereal, or checking the fridge wondering what's in the fruit drawer. My need for food both opens up my mind to a range of spatial possibilities and at the same time limits my experience of my home to a domain of service to those needs. But these same needs can also determine my attitude toward time, and in a way analogous as also. Maybe I know there are some frozen steaks in the garage freezer that I would love to eat, but it would take a lot of time to defrost and cook them. Or if I had a hankering for pizza or Thai food, one of the consideration of choosing one or the other would be delivery time. In the same way that I consider proximity in space when determining how to fulfill a particular need, I treat times in terms of proximity, that is, as a distance, which is properly a spatial rather than temporal concept, according to Bergson. We therefore expect the future to be like the past, that is, we expect time to be homogeneous, like space, only because it is pragmatic to do so. It's only in the absence of needs that real duration, what Bergson calls durée réelle, can be experienced more freely. For Bergson, it is in the falling away of these exigencies of daily life that we get a glimpse of the experience of real duration. For example, in those conscious moments just before we fall asleep. We feel this when we set aside time, perhaps in leisure, but for Bergson, more revealingly in dreams and in artistic creation. In the last chapter of what is thought to be his most significant work, Creative Evolution, Bergson finds the perfect analogy for his critique of philosophical understandings of time in the then recently invented cinematic graph. If you've never seen one of those, this is what it looks like. This is a device that could not only record a series of images, but also could project and even develop the film. According to Bergson, the mistakes of theories of time which are cinematographic is not only that by counting fluid motions we hypothesize certain moments, namely that we attempt to make, did we lose it already? We attempt to make immobile something which is by nature mobile. We also miss what happens in the gaps, as it were, between the frames. Thinking that we have captured an accurate depiction of reality by accumulating a finite number of moments, of snapshots, we then make the further mistake of thinking that we can reconstitute the motion by presenting in series the moments we have captured. What we do when we conceive of time as a number of motion is pick out and fix specific nows in a timeline by which we measure and then represent time to ourselves by attempting to reconstitute the motion measured by putting those moments side by side. All this in much the same way as a cinematograph reconstitutes motion by projecting on a screen a series of snapshots at 24 frames per second. For Bergson, at the movies, there is in fact a real continuous, albeit merely mechanical motion happening. It's just not where the viewer thinks it is. The cinematographic illusion is that the motion is on the screen, whereas in fact, the motion is contained in the apparatus projecting the images. What we are witnessing on the screen is a byproduct of real motion in the apparatus with its own real duration, but we are not really witnessing the motions represented on the screen. Okay. Now, Bergson applies this criticism to both ancient and modern philosophies, though not indiscriminately. So I'm going to quote at length from Bergson's Creative Evolution. It is the same cinematographic mechanism in both ancient and modern philosophy, but in the second case, it attains a level of precision that it cannot reach in the first. In the ancient version of cinematographic time, when we see a galloping horse, our eye above all perceives a characteristic, essential, or even schematic attitude, a form that appears to shine across the whole period and thus fill up the time of the gallop. And this is the attitude that the art of sculpture captures. But the instantaneous photograph, indicative of the modern version of cinematographic time, isolates any moment whatsoever. It places them all on the same level. And this is how a horse's gallop is divided into as many successive attitudes as one likes. Rather than being gathered into a single attitude that would shine in a privileged instant and light up an entire period. But in either case, when we look for what happens within one of those periods, within a given moment of time marked off by counting, we aim at something completely different. Now, what that thing is that we're aiming at is sort of mysterious. Now, it's hard to imagine that Bergson didn't have in mind here the work of Edward Muybridge, whose technological innovations in photography allowed for the capture of serial images of animal motion, perhaps the most famous of which is the galloping horse. It might look like he mounted a camera on a dolly and took pictures as it followed alongside a galloping horse, but in reality what's happening is that a series of cameras are set up alongside the path of the horse, which are triggered with some sort of tripwire as the animal passes, taking snapshots at select moments. If the cameras are set up at regular intervals, which are nonetheless arbitrary, they don't take into account what might be essential or privileged moments of the horse's movement. They would miss the most important moments of the horse's movement, those which might help us best understand the nature of a horse's movement, and perhaps even therefore the nature of the horse itself. But for Bergson, this misgiving isn't entirely relevant, because the picking out of a privileged moment, which might help determine a form in an Aristotelian sense, misses the whole of motion by neglecting, again, what is in between the instantaneous moments captured on film, whichever moments those might happen to be. Muybridge's images also illustrate Bergson's criticism of classical theories of time, which conceive of time as, quote, given all at once, again on the analogy of space. Augustine is an interesting foil here, since while he largely has a psychological account of time, in the end he understands time on the basis of eternity. That is, time from the point of view of a God that witnesses all of time at once. Much of modern science also conceives of time as given all at once, such that it is irrelevant to the causal relations between things, whether time moves faster or slower, or indeed forward or backwards. Both Augustine and modern science therefore fall prey to the spatialization of time. And from Muybridge's images, as we can see that we're not at all that far from what we might call true cinema, for we can animate his images by the miracle of the GIF. Let's see. There we go. So you can see why, and this was what early films looked like. Bergson might be worried that somehow we feel like we're seeing motion, but with the primitive technology, the fewer frames per second, it's really stilted, and we see that we're missing a lot in between. But don't think that this problem is now obsolete, that somehow the technology is different, because recordings are still done in terms of even digital frames per second. So we are still seeing a series of images, and the refresh rates on your televisions are really ways of saying how often the image on your screen is completely refreshed. So the technology is different. There's no moving projector behind us, but the images are still generated as slideshows. And for Bergson, no matter how many slides you put in that show, there will always be gaps, and you will always miss the flow. Yet, despite Bergson's unrelenting criticism of cinematographic thinking, film theory has been highly influenced by Bergson's ideas concerning durée réelle. We may then want to distinguish between the cinematographical experience of the mechanism, which Bergson is worried about, from the cinematic experience of the medium, which may in some other sense be considered Bergsonian. Cinematic time is highly manipulable, not just because we can speed up and slow down the recording and projecting mechanisms, but because editing techniques, montage, can allow for possibilities of experience of time which are not just beyond what we are capable of experiencing naturally, but also perhaps unique to cinema. In the 1922 film Third Alarm, there is a great example of an elementary montage technique that we would hardly notice today, but which at the same time would have made for a novel experience for the first-time viewer. So what we have here, and I've really edited it down myself, is a scene where it's going to cut back and forth between two simultaneous timelines. We see the woman in the burning building. We cut to far away. We see the firemen hearing the call of the bell. I cut out the most fun part, the car chase part. Cuts back and forth between a burning building and the fire truck going down the street. But what we're seeing is that there are these two independent timelines that are starting to converge. And considered independently, they each have their own tone or, say, emotion involved. That the fireman's feeling of temporality is, I got to get there quick to save this damsel in distress. But the damsel in distress's sense of time is different. Oh my God, I'm going to die, right? So they are two simultaneous clock times happening at the same time, but there are two different temporalities. I think that might be a way that Bergson would put it. And here they converge at the very end, right? So for us, this is really completely simple, no big deal. But I think back then, someone had to figure this out, figure out what the effect of this would be. And I think audiences did have novel experiences when this sort of thing was happening. So another example of the cinematic experience of time, which relies on more than techniques of montage, is a famous scene from Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey. In Jupiter and Beyond the Infinite, we are subjected to a barrage of abstract imagery for an interminably long time. I'm hoping people have seen this movie. If not, that's the next thing you should do. So I'm not going to spoil anything. I don't know how long the scene actually is, and I don't want to know. I think that's precisely the point. The scene is so overwhelming visually and so long that we lose track of time and even eventually give up on the expectation that this scene will end. I think if you do it right and just watch the movie, it just starts to flow over you and you lose track of time. You lose your hold on an expectation of the future. And I think that's what he's trying to do. In putting us in this position of giving up on time by overwhelming us with motion, Kubrick prepares us for the final scene, which is characterized by its stillness, sterility, and familiarity. A scene which seems to take place outside of time, while we witness the main character reduplicated several times over as he sees himself at a distance, watching himself age. It's an utterly bizarre, trying to figure out the logic of this final scene. But whatever is happening, he's prepared us for it by this extraordinarily long animated sequence, which is just overwhelming to the senses. So with that, I'll let that suffice as an introduction. And without further ado, let's have a look at Chris Marker's La Jetée. Okay, it's a little bit hard to follow that. It's bleak, but beautiful. Yeah? Yeah? Okay, so, but movies are supposed to be fun, right? So I'm going to try to lighten the mood with some little bit of trivia. Well, let's see here. See if you can maybe not name that tune this time. Okay, so if you can't name that, forget 2001. You have to go watch Vertigo. All right. Okay, but it's this shot here. Okay. It happens very fast. So it's so short. I feel like I wonder if I can slow it down. Too slow. Okay. So if you haven't seen the film, I haven't really spoiled that much. It happens in the first couple minutes. There's an analogous scene later. I'm not going to show that. You'll have to find that on your own. What's happening in the shot, it's pretty ingenious. I imagine Hitchcock is the one that came up with this, is that the camera is physically moving backwards as if on a track or something like that, and at the same time the lens is zooming forward. So you get this really disorienting, stretching effect. I think Vertigo's the first, but it's definitely not the last. Just a trigger warning, if you have some concerns about blood, there's a little blood on this clip. Let's see here. There we go. Who can name it? Yeah, where's the sound? Oh, turned it off. Okay, it's the same thing. It's done physically. I think there's one more clip after this, more recent, and I really don't know if it was done physically or not. And it's so recent that it's a very exaggerated version of what we just saw. So I'm not going to play any echoes of that, but those are all Vertigo scenes that have to be inspired by Hitchcock. They all seem to have to do with fear of falling, fear of sharks or the water, fear of the IRS, I guess, in the last one. But then watch this again. Sped up. Let's just wait till we get nauseous. Okay, this is the opening of La Jetée. I think it's the same effect done with a still image. I don't know exactly how he achieves it. He's has a film camera on a rostrum over a still image, and he's moving the camera across diagonally or pulling back. I don't know exactly how he achieves this, but I think he's trying to achieve the same thing that Hitchcock is doing as well, and that's the camera rostrum. So, however, he's using this machine to get that shot. I think he's trying to capture the famous Vertigo shot. So, truth be told, I'm actually taking a lot of cues from Chris Marker's own essay on Hitchcock's Vertigo. And there he says, quote, "The vertigo the film deals with isn't to do with space and falling. It is a clear, understandable, and spectacular metaphor for yet another kind of vertigo, much more difficult to represent, the vertigo of time." And since he alludes in the same essay to his own La Jetée as Vertigo's, quote, "remake in Paris," La Jetée must also be meant as a metaphor for the vertigo of time. And if Marker succeeds in representing the vertigo of time, I would like to suggest that he does this by overcoming the limitations of cinematographic time, which again Bergson thought could not substitute for the true temporal flux. So the scene I have in mind in particular is, of course, the heart of the film, the moment of motion when the woman stares through the screen and blinks. If you miss it, you have to watch the film again, because I'll talk about it, but I'm not going to show it to you again. You have to see it for yourself. For while I think it's evident that the opening shot is an example of spatial vertigo and is indeed dizzying if you speed it up and run it on a loop, I'd like to suggest that the one truly cinematic moment of the film, the few seconds of motion, is the real attempt to represent the vertigo of time. So what exactly are we, the viewer, experiencing in this enigmatic scene that might give us a clue to what Marker is up to? Perhaps more important than the moment itself is how Marker prepares the viewer for the experience of the vertigo of time. He does this largely by confounding expectation, similarly to Kubrick's 2001, but as it were in an inverse fashion. By the time we get to the blinking scene, we've been conditioned to expect a slideshow and have abandoned the expectation that this so-called movie is going to, do anything but move. That is, until it does, at which point we are caught off guard and made vulnerable to a certain difficult-to-describe experience. This disorientation must give us a glimpse of the vertigo of time, and I'd like to claim that this glimpse either is or is a simulation of what Bergson calls real duration, despite perhaps what his own reservations might be. If I'm right about the latter, then Marker will have managed to overcome Bergson's concern about the cinematographic illusion by somehow using the medium of film against itself, by creating a cinematic illusion. By constantly reminding us that cinema is a series of still photos, when we experience the cinematic illusion, we do so with the awareness that the illusion is an illusion. The film thus makes us aware of itself, allowing us at least some semblance of real duration, through the experience of a momentary temporal vertigo, allowing us for a moment to reverse our intellect's natural subordination of temporality to spatiality. So what about the traveler? How does he experience the vertigo of time, and under what conditions? We viewers are prepared for the moment by Marker's use of the cinematic medium. The traveler, on the other hand, is prepared for this moment dramatically within the film itself. So I want to look at a series of slides to point out the conditions necessary for the traveler to experience the cinematic moment from his side, to try to understand this moment from inside the film rather than from without. So I'll rush this a little bit, but I have to share this. Let's start on the 30th day. He fades back into the past. This is the day they meet. We have this iconic, enigmatic image of the woman he's been looking for. We see what he sees. We get a little mini vertigo. There's a smooth zoom here. This time he recognizes her for sure. In fact, it's the only thing he's sure of. As she passes in front of a window, looking back at him, seemingly, through the veil of her fingers, and he follows her, as I would put it, through the looking glass. So there's a kind of split or doubling happening here. What happens next is he is distracted by this world of his past, by all the astonishing materials. The woman disappears. He fades back into the present. The scientists send him back. Time rolls back again. The moment returns. We have the same image again. You look in the corner, you see this. This was also there before. It's an identical image. In the next shot, we see what that in the corner is. It's the traveler's shoulder. So when he first sees the woman, he's already there in front of her. And I think it's not a mistake. It's not a continuity error. This next several shots emphasize this shoulder. So this is the only time in the timeline of the film where there's a loop, where there's an actual twice-lived moment. So when the narrator says twice-lived moment, he seems to be referring to the moment of his own death. But what I think is happening is when we have one recurrence, they send him back again to the same moment, he lives it again. This time, he doesn't pass through the looking glass. He doesn't pass in front of a mirror. He speaks to her and acts. He acts in this past as if it were the present. And this is the beginning of their courtship. And this is where he's able to begin living in the past, as it were. He's in the past as if it were the present. Now he can act and move around. Speaks to her, can jump ahead. During the courtship, he also has this moment where he loses track of her. They give him another shot, send him back, and he sees not an identical image that he had before, but the woman sitting on a bench, and we have these crossfades that are anticipatory of the crossfades that we get right before the cinematic moment, right before the blinking scene, but sort of brutally interrupted by the gaze of Dr. Frankenstein. Okay. Immediately after this, they run some more experiments. He has these moments. this, I think, is the sort of the key moment. Every time it's been him going back and meeting her. This time, she leans over him. And the way the fades and the cuts are happening here, it looks like she's the one time traveling from the past into the present. Okay? And we see, usually it's, he fades into her time. Now he is, how do you explain? The fade comes, it's the inverse of the usual. She disappears, and then the narrator lets us know he never knows whether he moves towards her or is pushed, whether he's made it all up or is only dreaming. Then he seems to fall into a deep sleep. We fade out completely to black, and we fade in. We get the anticipatory crossfades that will eventually lead to the moment of motion, the blinking scene, which again is rather rudely interrupted by Dr. Frankenstein. Did anyone notice the difference between this interruption and the last? This time he's not pulling a blindfold off. In fact, when the traveler is falling asleep, he's not wearing a blindfold. So whatever happens in this moment is not happening in the past. You gotta wear, a blindfold to try time travel to the past. No blindfold, no time travel. Same look, no blindfold, so he's still in the present. And so what I think is happening is that that image that he was able to live with and move with in the past has somehow managed to move forward into his present, to act on him in the present. This doesn't exactly fit with what the narrator is telling us, that the traveler is traveling through time. But we all know that we can't live the same moment twice. So he's either dreaming or he's going mad. So I have a little more to say, but I'm going to leave it at that for now, and we can talk about, take a 10-minute break and come back and maybe test some of this hypothesis. So thank you. Appreciate it. A little, how would you put it, Easter egg we would call it these days? This credit is very unusual, with the participation of the Service of the Research of the RTF. Apparently this was like a sort of an artistic think tank sponsored by French government for artists to come. They had an archive and working artists sharing work. And if you blink, you missed it. It goes from recherche, which I guess is to seek, to travail, to find. So I think this is a hint that we're supposed to look closely. So yeah, any part you want to talk about?
One of the first frames, while the kid is looking at the planes, the next frame he sees the woman in the corner. It also seems to be the last frame after that one. Next. Oh, there you go.
The woman's face or this? Yes.
That's the one.
Yeah, this is key.
Isn't that the last frame as well?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So watch.
I want you to comment on it.
Yes. I mean, no. Let's watch. This is so strange. When I first realized this, I knew that something was going on. Let's see how long it'll take to. Okay, probably. Let's watch the whole movie in 30 seconds. It's not going to be fast enough. So what it says is that he would long remember the sight of a frozen sun, the setting at the end of the deck. Does it look the same?
No, there's missing a person that's already, the other frame had a man who wasn't himself.
Mm-hmm. So let's get back there here. Where's the setting? There it is. I mean, look how different. The sun is different. I mean, the angle is different, but yeah, benches, garbage can is different. So, we're supposed to be returning to the same moment, right? The narrator is telling us we're returning to the same moment. Narrator is telling me that this is the twice lived moment as a child and as an adult.
And this is what memory does.
Yeah, say more. I mean,
don't we all have memories of our childhood, of images that stay with us, and we can't trust them necessarily, and we carry them for an awful long time, maybe to our deaths?
yeah,
The
well,
question is, why do you not trust them? Our memory's not just, isn't a memory just remembering the last time we remembered something?
you mean every time we remember, we're remembering the last time we remembered?
Correct.
And that
I'm not
can,
saying that is correct, it's saying that's what.
yeah. So through those repetitions, when you're invigorating a memory, they change. So is this happening in his memory, or is this happening in time travel? I think that, because the premise of the story, the guy's telling us the whole time, we're traveling through time. He's not saying, and the man was deluded, and his memories were changing, and he thought he experienced. You see what I'm saying? For some reason, the images, the story that the images are telling is not quite the same as the story that the narrator is telling. And that might be a problem of the way our memory works too. Yeah.
It also, one thinks about déjà vu, because very often the sense is not only that you've experienced it before, but you would experience it again, or the sense of the temporal location of the déjà vu moment is uncertain, and it's both in the past and present, and it's maybe even in the future.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that you mentioned this, because the thing that I studied most when I was reading Bergson was an essay on false recognition, which we would call déjà vu. And the way he talks about it is, well, the most briefly, it's where the split that usually happens between present perception and memory doesn't happen. Usually our experience divides itself off into what it can act on in the present and perceive, and what it needs to keep for later. When that split doesn't happen, you have déjà vu. And the way you're about to describe the future, you have this feeling that you will have known what is going to happen. You don't know what's going to happen, but you will have known. And you know that you will have known. So it's very strange. But when I was reading Bergson alongside this film, it was his essay on déjà vu along with matter and memory that had the most impact, rang the most bells while I was reading. I saw another hand way in the back.
What is the relationship between the loop within the film with the shoulder that you're talking about and the loop of his serious neck?
Oh gosh, I mean, yeah, because that's the confusion. The narrator is telling us that the twice-lived moment is the moment of his own death. And the film is telling us that the twice-lived moment is this first encounter. I mean, I think there's some images that associate this woman who seems so innocent and beautiful and inviting with death. And one of them is at a crucial moment where here it is. There's something really ominous. It's right after the Hitchcock scene. This and there's a jump zoom, and this is not the same woman. I feel like, well, if you know, well, shoot, I can't talk about Vertigo because if you haven't seen it, never mind. No, it's, I feel like this woman is concealing something of the woman that we're usually seeing. Those iconic, inviting images. And there's something very strange here when, okay, so first of all, let me ask, you get this fade, he falls back exhausted. Do you guys see a bird? Is that just me? Okay, just see the bird. Okay, it's just part of his mask and then the other wing, maybe head or something. He goes back. This is when he sees her dead. And now these bird wings make her seem demonic. I don't know if I'm just having associations or I'm just suspicious because this film has done something to me. But there's something off about her in some of these frames, and so there might be an association between the loop where he first meets her with death, also because the very first time he meets her at the very beginning of the film, she is the peacetime image that accompanied the trauma of seeing a man die. So from the very beginning, she and death are just melded together. And I think it's really easy to forget that based on the sort of tone of the images that we, especially that first one, which this is a peacetime image. Yeah.
There's another side to it that I think has to do with the music,
Mm-hmm.
the chant, which I could be wrong, but I think that's the chant Yechna Anna that's sung at the memorials of the dead.
Is that right?
Orthodox Church. Could be wrong.
Uh,
And the idea is, may their memory be eternal. And by eternity, I mean, that's another aspect of time that we haven't talked about, and it's not Bergsonian.
Yeah.
But it has to do with a kind of life that is not something of the future. It's not like eternal life in the sense of like living forever or
Mortality.
going to heaven.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a different quality of life, which is somehow the life of the presence of God and the presence of the dead. And the very, very sustained use of that chant at the beginning, I think, is highly intentional.
Yeah, I agree with you. I imagine you're right about the reference. I actually don't know it, but the sense of eternity, the living a kind of eternal life that's not about immortality,
Yes.
living beyond the end of the bodily life, but a kind of eternity that you can live in, eternal life you can live right now.
Yes.
And this is what I talked about exactly 10 years ago. I talked about Augustine. And for him, the psychological aspect of time is that we feel in the now as we're traveling through it, pulled toward the future and dragged to the past. And so there's a kind of tension in how we experience time for him. It's painful, stretched over the rack of the now or something like that. And his solution to that is to, I wish I had that quote handy, is to partake in the eternity of God, to leave this time behind and to dwell. It says something like, melt into the fire of your heart, to God, addressing God. But that's not a life after death. That is something that can happen now. I think maybe for him, it's a different way of experiencing this life with its beginning, middle, and end, as if every now is an eternity. Or
Right, and the purpose of the sacraments in the Orthodox Catholic understanding is to sanctify, which
Sanctify
means to break it open, remove its merely transient sense, and to reveal that action is happening continuously.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, the evocation of the sacrament through the whole first, I can't remember where the chant stops, but it's a very long time.
Yeah, the
And
opening.
the way in which it's happening auditorially, and
Yeah.
which it's going into you without any visual mediation, and in a very sustained way.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's a long piece of music. I think he uses it at least twice, the very beginning, and then showing the pictures of devastated Paris in the back.
Yeah, I have two thoughts. One on the sound. I was struck this time watching it that the very first sound is actually a plane taking off,
Mm-hmm.
which I had always thought that it was the chant that started it, but it's actually the plane comes first,
Mm.
and then the chant starts. Which I think just like if we're thinking about where we're located in time somehow, I think that's really, I don't know, it just struck me as like, okay, it's actually somehow on the jet bridge, and then the chant kicks in.
Mhm.
And the chant seems much more of a sort of timeless to me somehow. Yeah, and then the
Mhm.
other thing I want to say that I feel like fits very closely with this idea of eternity is I'm always really fascinated by the scene with all the taxidermied animals.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like this is exactly the sort of thing, like it's not about immortality, but it is about eternity somehow. Like it is about like, let's preserve these dead things after they're dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just kind of interested how you read that scene in the context of.
Yeah, I mean it's complicated. I think you're right that there's this impulse to freeze time in taxidermy, but also with graves. And one of the last things in his first series of memories as they're sort of welling up are real graves. And that's an attempt to defeat time, to stop, to give a marker to something that will pass. I mean, it's interesting. He has another film that he made with Alain René called Statues Also Die. So I think he's sensitive to this idea that we're trying to freeze something in a statue, but even the statue will perish, even a grave will perish, those taxidermies will fall apart. But that whole scene is really unusual because, well, for one thing, everything's behind glass. And the way I was reading the meeting scene is sort of a moment where you're through the looking glass. There are times when they're looking at the animals behind the glass, and there are times when they are shot as if from inside the aquarium looking out, and they are preserved behind the glass. And so there's a way in which I think that whole scene is happening sort of, let's say, on the other side of the mirror, whatever that might mean.
But taxidermy has a certain ironic,
Yeah.
almost comic air. I mean, as a kind of, and they seem to be smiling and amused, as I recall in those scenes. I couldn't swear to that. And so there's also that sense of that the taxidermy is a kind of a comic attempt to evoke eternal life. But it has to be said that in a traditional funeral of the Orthodox, the coffin is open, and you have to gaze on the face of the dead person, even kiss their hand or face, and that sense of, I mean, in some sense, they're already, I suppose, a kind of taxidermy at that point, like embalming or something like that. But there is also that sense of, it's not like a modern funeral where you're celebrating their life. The chant at that point says something like, say your last farewell, weep, mourn, this is it. And it emphasizes the finality of it at the same time as it's trying, in a very radical way, to say this is the moment of eternity. And so in that sense, taxidermy, I mean, it's an interesting but a very, the encounters that he's wanting are more like gazing at the face of the dead person for the last time.
But you said something at first that there's something comic or about taxidermy. I have evidence of this, and I think this is evidence that this director, despite how bleak this is, has a sense of humor, and he's known for being a cat lover, so there's this weird where he's sneaking a peek at, you know, the nape of her neck, and
Right.
there's something kind of I don't know what you say, voyeuristic about it. And then look, I mean, that's hilarious, right? Or is that just me? No?
That's funny.
I mean, that's a funny looking cat.
Well, they're looking. They're looking.
They're looking at it.
They're the real voyeurs.
Yeah, yeah.
And the other thing is that image that you showed us earlier, in which the first time he sees her, he's not looking at her. He's looking off in this direction, she's off there. So that sense of who is looking seems to be always being
Mm-hmm.
refracted back to us. We are for sure looking.
Yeah.
And they're looking.
And there's a lot of staring shots where the viewer is implicated heavily. But yeah.
Yeah, the animals in your museum, I mean, I wonder if some of them aren't supposed to strike us as, like fantastic rather than real.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't there one that was like a sex life or something?
The orangutan.
Oh, that's just kind
Yeah. But I thought maybe the shark would start to fit. What?
I thought there were animals that looked even more fantastic than that, and I guess I was sort of wondering if, we weren't supposed to a little bit view the museum scene as though this is in the future where people are getting it a little bit wrong about what animals were like. And I guess I wanted to try to connect that with, seems like there's, yeah, like maybe that.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Are we in the future where we're in a museum where people are getting it quite wrong about what animals in general were like? And I guess I wanted to ask about whether this film has an ambition to put us in the frame of mind of urgently recalling our own present from a point in the future. I mean,
You
when
mean-
he says things like, I thought of this when you said about the real graves, because he says real cats, real birds, real graves. Yeah, I mean, there's just like, in terms of what the ambition of the film is, vis-a-vis nuclear war.
Uh-huh.
I mean, when a person goes to a museum, they don't expect to see live animals, right? And so I actually was thinking, and maybe this doesn't clash with what was said before, that there was kind of honesty in the taxidermy. They're postured, but no one is supposed to take them as alive. I mean, that's a manta ray, right, hovering in the air.
But it could be there are no more animals.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like there are no more animals.
Yeah, and this is it.
And there's really only ageless animals now.
Stuff.
I mean, the thing that I like the best about that is that puts this scene in the present rather than in the past. Because my suggestion is that once she leans over him, and once we're in the blinking moment, this is right after that, she has invaded the present.
Yeah.
And the way I was talking about the other day in seminar was that this was somehow a timeless place. But because there's no living animals, there can't be a zoo because there's been an apocalypse.
Right.
And this is the best we have left. And they, I don't, maybe this is beautiful in nature, but not here.
Right.
Or, hippopotamus looks very alien and strange.
Yeah.
That one sort of looks, is it a rhinoceros or a demon hippopotamus? It's hard to, I mean, maybe there is some kind of distortion of what life will be remembered as once it's over.
Yeah, it makes me want to, it tries to make me view my own present that I'm currently living in as lost.
Or,
I mean, that is kind of a definition of prayer, that state of mind when a person is contemplating the that sense of a strange suspension of expectation and dread and hope.
Well, I guess I wanna relate it to the nuclear war. I wanna make it more specific.
Yeah, I don't know if I can do that myself. Maybe,
Well, I don't know that it has to be coherent,
yeah.
but it's gotta be
Well, there's a way that I think what you're talking about is kind of an inversion of what the story is actually saying. That as a child, this boy witnesses his own death as a man, not knowing. But what you're talking about is as if from beyond the grave, we're imagining what it will be like to have died. So,
well, what it will be like for the world to have
right,
vanished.
yeah. So imagining the aftermath of World War III.
Say you take the woman, she has these moments where she just looks like a French woman, then she has these moments where she looks like she's at a funeral. And has it
Yeah.
ever occurred to you as an alternative, because I've seen this movie multiple times, did it ever occur to you as an alternative read of it that when she talks about "you're my ghost,"
Yeah.
right, and she always appears in black, and she says that, so I thought, have you ever
Yeah.
thought about the reading, I think you were going with this, is that she only first sees him as she's she's at the airport, and the first time she really sees him is running up being shot. And she doesn't know him.
Okay, so
And then
that's,
all these other times that she's meeting him, he's this ghost, this apparition that comes in and out of her life.
Yeah.
It fades, and she has the dark, because if you look carefully, look at when she has the black dress and all that. And that's all these early things. And also, there's somewhat of a confusion of the first loop, where he's watching her, knowing him, and it's like, is he watching the two of them as him as a ghost with her? So just, just because we always make this presumption, because it follows a very set sci-fi concept of the time travel loop,
Yeah.
that, you see, or it's always the thing, it's like, oh, I saw this person die, well, that was always you, or that was your father, or that
Right.
was your, whatever. But what if we went a little bit further and said, he was always her ghost?
yeah,
And the only reason that she would even understand that is she saw this man die one time.
yeah.
Right?
So let me
And
see.
it's this
See,
funeral.
you're capitalizing on
Oh, I'm
this
capitalizing.
on this idea that she somehow welcomes him without. He's blipping in and out of her
She doesn't seem
existence.
bothered by
It
this, she
doesn't
calls him an apparition.
And to me, that's
Why would that make any sense unless she saw this man die one day and she's having this vision of that man she saw shot at the airport,
Yeah.
and she's just like thinking about this,
Mhm.
obsessed, just like he's supposedly coming back, from the future to the present. She's having these images of this romantic time with this man she just saw for an instant being shot, just like the man himself saw this man being shot for an instant and spent his whole life trying to figure out, like, what did I see? And she's saying, what did I see? And then there's this man.
no. I think this is important because if you read it from her point of view, you can end up with a very different story. Say using the exact same images. Maybe you don't even need to rearrange them. But if she witnesses a man die, and that is a trauma for her, that sticks with her, then he keeps coming back to haunt her, right? But that, to me, that's really interesting because as skeptical as I am of the narrator, I do take that the first and the last moment on the pier with her there are supposed to be the beginning, right? That's the first time, that's the last time that she sees him after their courtship, she sees him running towards her. Maybe her first impression is, oh, here comes my ghost again. But you're saying, no, actually, that's the first time
She's
ever seen him, and that every other encounter they have is
this
after.
guy.
So that completely reverses the reading. So Yeah, I think you could start the story as this is a story of a woman marked by an image of a man, and do it a whole other way. But our narrator
Because
chooses,
remember, he's going back in time as a practice run.
yeah, for the future.
And for the future, and then when they said, we're gonna do this thing, it's not we're sending you back to the past, we're sending you to the future.
Yeah,
He says, no, I don't wanna be here, I wanna be with this woman who I've been spending time with. And
Yeah.
you know what the price of not doing what Dr. Frankenstein says? You're dead. And that's what happens, because he's in the
Right.
future, he says, no, send me back here.
Right.
And it's like, no, you would send me in the future, get this technology back, you didn't follow the rules, and now we're ready to do that. And in a sense, he was never gonna do the mission, because remember, the mission is about going to the future and getting this
Yeah.
technology. The
So-
mission was never, it was like, is he not, can you go in the past, something familiar, and keep your, not go crazy? Then maybe we can send you to the future now.
right.
But he did go crazy, right? And then he wanted to go back, and then we start the whole thing again.
Well, this goes back to the first gentleman's question about the setting at the end of the pier. And another thing that we didn't notice, because the frames I showed only showed his back. Well, let me ask a quick quiz. How do you know when you're time traveling? You're wearing a blindfold, right? How do you know when you're in the future? That's right, sunglasses. All right? Sunglasses. Okay, so what is going on here? The experiment's over. They're going to execute him. He's in some kind of limbo. And the future people show up again somehow. But look at him. No blindfold. Maybe they have time travel technology that doesn't need one? Maybe.
What's the funny thing in their forehead?
I don't know. It looks like a wax seal to me. Mr. David said it was
The
a
futuristic
chip.
fashion thing.
But there's something different about this. When they come for him,
USB port.
this slag that they rejected, for some reason, they decide they want him, and he chooses something else. You have this weird spectral film overlaid.
Kind of all temporal continuity put in question by these demigods from the future, because they're handing out power plants to him.
Yeah.
They're gatekeepers to the future. They feel an obligation. He appeals to a sense of obligation they have to change the past.
Yeah.
In order to save themselves, perhaps, right?
Yeah, it does. They do say that. Okay, still in the quiz here though. So I'm not exactly where this is. This is the limbo, right? And they're inviting him into the future, but he's choosing the past. He's wearing sunglasses. He chooses the past. But where is he really? He's wearing sunglasses. There's no blindfold. And that's a great shot. Yeah, sunglasses. This is not the past. How do you know you're in the past? No blindfold, no sunglasses. How do you know you're in the future? Sunglasses. And for what it's worth, oh yeah, okay, so sunglasses. He gets to the deck. He envisions what he's going to find at the end of the deck. And then he runs. And what does he find? He finds what he envisioned. Okay, so this is not the first frame. This is without, the end of the pier without furniture. He knows what he's looking for. He knows in a confused way that he might see the boy. He's not interested in that. We don't see a kid standing on the railing anywhere. But before he runs to the end of the pier, he projects what he's going to see. And he even sees the guy that's going to kill him in his projection. And it says that he doesn't. Just for what it's worth, I think Chris Marker is very coy. And if there's any shot in which the photographer is present, it's this one. This, I guess, behind his glasses, there's kind of waiting room in Orly. He's got some famous photographs with this door. It's taking pictures of the model behind that door in that circle. I think maybe that's him. I don't know. Do you know what I'm saying? That It's the only shot, and where I don't know, is it a mistake? You're not supposed to catch yourself in your own shot, but if there's anywhere that he does, it's here.
But Alfred Hitchcock always did that too.
That's right. That's right. The cameos. Does anybody remember the cameo from Vertigo? I think he's walking. You got it?
I thought he was going for a bus.
Yeah, he's walking across the screen in front of like a construction site. It looks like maybe he's going to catch a bus, and he's carrying a French horn or something in a case. Something really strange. So yeah, maybe this is the cameo. This could be the cameo. That would be really good.
Is there somebody taking photos that's visible the first time or after?
Is there someone visible when they're taking?
I don't think it's the same, like, I don't think it's actually the marker, but is there somebody, like, that's taking photos on the after?
Oh, I don't know. One of the tourists looking at the planes.
Like this. I think I would, yeah,
It wouldn't surprise me.
yeah.
I hadn't noticed that yet.
Isn't the man who actually shoots him is also like some kind of glasses?
Yeah, those very strange goggles. Let me see. Yeah. So those are, post-apocalyptic glasses. So I don't know what that allows you to do, but it's different than the Ray-Bans and different than the blindfold. So I'm not actually sure. Yeah.
What's your take on when the future people are back, he sees them for the second time, there's like a glass between them, it seems like it's a bulletproof glass with like
Mhm.
holes in it, or, I don't know, like, what is that?
My opinion, I'm very, I don't think, it's not quite cynical. I think he's dead or dying. I think this is his dream. So if he was time traveling the first time when he met them, which I don't think he was, but maybe. I don't trust the narrator anymore. I've looked at the pictures so many times without listening to him that I have another story completely. But my story is that this film is his dream consciousness.
Why is it like that?
Because
See
it's
the future, man.
fuzzy, it's obscured, it's failing consciousness. I mean, the shimmeringness, I think what it's supposed to be, according to the narrator, would be, this is the apparatus for time travelers who can do it from the future, who know how to do it better than with blindfolds. Like, so it's somehow a representation of the time machine.
Does it look like damaged film?
Oh, it could be.
I'm not sure I don't know enough about film.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, so deep in this limbo, here they are. And you have those, he passed through a bunch of these sort of mineral sliver looking things. And then his eyes roll back. And we haven't seen that before. And there they were. But like I said, I'm highly skeptical of what's actually going on with the images are telling. And the main thing is, it seems trivial, but it's the sunglasses. That this is supposed to be the past, but he's wearing the future glasses.
He says something about a frozen sun.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like related to something.
Yeah, could be. At the beginning, he says he would long remember the sight of a frozen sun and the setting at the end of the deck. And he's running towards the sun. Big crowd of people. And then again, he's projecting forward to what he's who he expects to see. In seminar, we had the professional wrestling connection. This is another sign of his sense of humor. Turns out El Santo was a Mexican wrestling star from the 50s and 60s, had his own comic book. It was a very big deal, apparently. I think that's a little nod to his sense of humor. But here you see the sun in his sunglasses, like you were saying.
Because one thinks that this is going to be the moment of the big boom, the big blast,
Oh,
right? But it isn't, right?
you mean you thought it would be the bomb?
Well, just in a very general way, when you're watching this film and you kind of know that it's about nuclear war, you think that the big moment that sparks the movie and that the movie returns to is going to be that. I thought, I think when I first watched this movie,
So you were, the moment from the beginning of the film when he sees the man die, you were expecting that moment to return?
No, I'm saying, I don't know, I'm sorry, when you see all those people on the platform,
Right.
what I think is, oh, they're all gonna be blown up by the nuclear blast.
Oh, you do think it's so this could be the moment of the end of the world? Yeah.
I realize that that's not correct, but it's hinted at.
Yeah.
It's,
Well, I thought you were going to say that the moment of reunited love, and you went the complete opposite direction. But that this should be the triumphant moment when he gets to reunite with this woman he's fallen in love with. And maybe you can do one more if need be. Anybody? I have a really short bonus features clip that I feel like I have to share. Some Chris Marker rarities. Can you guys spare 3 minutes?
yes.
Okay. Let me see. I was just so happy. Took me a long time to find this. This is not part of. This is a bonus feature that's not as fun. But here we go. This is Chris Marker collaborating with Pierre Cast, I think. No, I have the name wrong. It's the wrong one. But this is a Chris Marker moment in an animation by a French animator. And we see the crossfades. It's characteristic of Marker. The next one we'll see is a movie of his own made about 4 years after La Jetée. And then the last one is a collaboration he did with another French animator. See the bird? Does it look familiar? That's uncut, that's part of the same film. And that's the actress again.
Et si je veux vivre, si je veux survivre, je dois sortir. Même après la mort d'Hamlet, la vie continue et sonne les trompettes de Fortinbras. Chaque jour, chaque minute, 1000 créatures sublimes parcourent le monde. Je serai triste, elles seront touchées. J'ai changé, je les aimerai pour elles-mêmes, comme elles seront, gracieuses, compatissantes. Je peux encore gagner quelques batailles. J'ai une arme imparable. Au cœur, la brûlure de 1000 soleils.
it's 3 riffs on the blinking scene. But before I let you go, you have to name that tune, please, somebody. Come on, how many Johnnies? Lee, come on. It was only 40
I know the
years.
song,
It was only 30 years
it's
ago.
just like Shazam will pull it up for you.
Yeah.
It's a song.
You know, Doji Thomas?
Sure.
Give you a hint, it's Mozart.
Giovanni.
It's Don Giovanni. All right. Anyways, he's got good taste too. Anyways, thank you guys for coming.